Peace and power, peace and power. I thank the universal truth and the absolute laws of nature for guiding me, protecting me, and giving me the strength to endure the imperfect. I shall attack with vigor, making progressive moves. A divine mind knows, a divine mind shows. All things work in divine order. All things work in divine order. All things work in divine order. Peace and power to the people that struggle. As you come on in, know that you are in a safe space. Know that you are in a space of learning and getting learned up. Know that you are in a space of educating and being educated. Know that you are in a space, questions, answers, seeking solutions, analyzing, dialoguing, building, all on a path to true liberation. As my classroom assistants come on in, please come on in and share. Let your rest of the classmates know that we are here Saturday night for the Saturday night book club. Yes. Let them know you are in class. Regardless if they're in New York City or if they're in Cali, regardless if they're in London or Switzerland or Berlin, Jamaica, let them know we are here. Yes, let them know we are here. We won't be here long, but we're going to get something in. Definitely. Classroom assistants, please make sure all contact information is in the chat for the duration of class. Make sure all funding information is in the chat for the duration of class. And if you or anyone you know has an anger management issue, please reach out for an assessment. Please reach out for a session if you are under our care. Yes, indeed, if you are under our care, reach out for an assessment. If you or anyone you know is suspected of living in a domestic violence situation, reach out. Put some tools in your toolbox. Become equipped. Know what to look for. Be certain that you understand what it means to be in that situation, and then find strategies for exit. Remember, the life you save could be your own. Let's get to it. Late night class. Woo, we gonna see a lot of 55s tomorrow and Monday. I guarantee you that. Jason Reels is in the building. Sportsway with Trade Day podcast. ENY. Yes. Slaughter. Salute. See, Bliz is up. Lovely Lady is up. Tara Green is up with one eye. Saul. Yeah, you made it. Teachers here, we just had a lot of noise in the background. But Saul, you get a 55. First late night 55 of the night. Merk Lowe, what up? Mark Hines, Rebel. Indeed. Cool K. Yes. Stephanie TGB. Yes. Jason Reels, that's the best thing you can do. Excuse me. Is talk it through. All things work in divine order. All things work in divine order. And if the order of you is to be complete as a unit, then work on it. It's the only way you'll find out. This evening, I don't know how many have the book, as we suggested, as we spoke about, right? I know I have mine. Do you have yours? This is it. All God's children. Yeah. All God's children. Excellent piece. And I'm sure, because I've seen some people DM me, I got mine, I downloaded mine, I got mine, and so far they're loving it. Like I say, the way it is written, the way it is organized, not only is it a very interesting read, it is also a simple read. Okay? Very simple, straight to the point, and it's a historical piece. A historical piece. And in that history, there are lessons. There are lessons that we can use today. Because as you see, and as I always say, as long as we're on this corporation, in this poor part of the planet, under the governance here that we are under, crime and punishment, the justice system will always be present and always be an issue. So this is why this is an important piece, along with all the other books, because most of our books, we make sure that we go through them thoroughly to help us navigate, to help us learn new and old languages and see if those lessons will apply today to keep us all out of harm's way. Okay? Now, we started on a prologue, and I'm sure if we are in the same space that we were on previous book clubs, right? Some people read at a much faster pace than others. Others comprehend at a much quicker pace. We have these young folk like Tierra who read and read vigorously and maybe well deep into the middle of this text. But we're going to keep to our same format on how we organize book club, because again, the best way to read, the best way to enjoy, and the best way to get on and remain on the same page sometimes is to read together and dialogue through it so we all can put our understandings, right here for everyone. And the more of us that share those understandings, the better we will be. So again, this is a war. Can't encourage you enough, especially with what we've been seeing through the past week. The fund war effort to keep our lens focused and to remain militant. So, I'm not sure how far most of you got, but we're going to continue in the prologue of this piece before we even get into that first chapter, right? Part 1. We ain't even gonna get there. When I tell you this is a beautiful piece, beautiful piece. Hey, Richardson, salute. Okay? So let's get into where we had left off. All right? And I believe this is the second paragraph, right? In Roman numeral 14 of the prologue. Willie did not look dangerous. He is slight, 5'9" tall, and at most 150 pounds, when he is not on a deprivation diet of bread, cabbage, and water. Now, if you've never been in the system, if you've never been behind bars, you wouldn't know what the box, administrative segregation, the bing, the hole, you wouldn't know these terms, especially if you aren't one who have family members who can tell you what it is. But whenever you're in this situation, you have population and then you have segregation, usually for those people who they deem unruly or dangerous to the rest of the population or to the staff. And when you are in these spaces, they make an attempt to have one live in the most dire and extreme conditions as a punishment to slow you down. One of the strategies is to play with your diet, to cause you to be weak through lack of nourishment. And one of those strategies is to put you on a cabbage diet. And when I tell you it's the absolute worst, it's the absolute worst. Now, so more than in the past, where you just get something that's called a cabbage loaf. It's just a bunch of cabbage, maybe mixed with something else that's dry, bread, water, some, depending on what spot you're in, they mix it with carrot. It's just despicable. And it has no nutrients in it. It's just cabbage. Cooked and then put to the side. Some of it's not even cooked all the way through. It's just raw cabbage loaf. And when I tell you, after a week or two of that, you lose so much weight, you're so weak. But you have people who are on that diet, sometimes 30 days, maybe more, depending on the type of infraction and what you do as far as behavior while you're on that or in that space. So at 5'9", and you on a cabbage diet, yeah, you're looking real crazy. He has cherubic features and a quick, boyish grin, accentuated by deep, puckish dimples at both corners of his mouth. His large, lively eyes convey an infectious enthusiasm. His voice is strong and deep and persuasive. When he was a boy, some of his teachers thought he could have been president. He has so much charm and intelligence. His IQ breached the genius level. So this is how people see him, view him in all of his experience. Okay? And it is not too much different than the majority of our young men in our communities, in our projects, in our wards, in our hoods, that same description can be given to them. However, we allow others to describe them, and they describe them in some of the worst language. And then we believe that because others put that description on them, that that is an actual fact. And then we've distanced ourselves from our young soldiers, from our young scholars, from our young saviors. So that description could be of anyone, your cousin, your nephew, your grandson. Okay? This is where we're at with it. Unhappily, there was the matter of his criminal record. He had first been sent away to reform school by a judge at age 9. That was after he heaved a typewriter out of a school window at a pregnant teacher. No reformatory or mental institution could hold him for long. He assaulted his social workers with scissors or metal chairs, set other inmates on fire, or escaped by driving off in state vehicles. His legs seemingly too short to reach the controls and his head not high enough to see over the dashboard. Psychiatrists prescribed antipsychotic drugs. They had no effect. No effect. By the age of 15, Willie claimed he had committed 2,000 crimes, including 200 armed robberies and 25 stabbings. Even allowing for youthful braggadocio, the figure was impressive. In the spring of his 15th season, Willie shot and killed 2 men on a subway in Manhattan. The murders should not have happened. Willie was supposed to have been under the supervision of the Division for Youth, New York's juvenile justice agency. Afterward, Willie laughed about the killings. "I shot people, that's all," he said. "I don't feel nothing." He was sentenced to the maximum law allowed, 5 years in a state training school. The murders made Willie a celebrity. Mayor Ed Koch branded him a mad dog killer. More important, the shootings made Willie a precursor of the terrifying surge of children who kill in the waning hours of the 20th century. In New York, revulsion over Willie's acts and the brevity of his sentence frightened the legislature into swiftly passing a new law that enabled the state to try juveniles as young as 13 for murder as if they were adults. It came to be known as the Willie Bosket Law. It was the first such statute in the country. Soon, as the epidemic of children with guns spread, other states copied the New York model. So I need you to understand that, right? And I need y'all to also to understand that it's not ironic that at this time that Willie was moving in this space, there was the explosion of the crack cocaine epidemic. Okay? Now, Willie's behavior is something that we will find out blossomed from not only what was in him, if we want to say passed down through genetics, but also through the themes of family history. And in his manifestation, and in others witnessing that, and the information from prison to prison, to child, this became norm. This became adolescence running wild. And there is a very deep connection between Willie and some of our youth that we see today. Conditions, institutions breed this type of behavior, and the lack of nurturing from parents, from grandparents, from educators, from community accelerated to the point of which what Willie was doing back then seems normal now. Okay? As an adult, Willie continued his campaign of terror even while incarcerated. In 1988, he stabbed a prison guard in the chest with a 5.5-inch shank, a homemade stiletto. Willie picked the visiting room, right, for the assault in front of more than 100 people. He had never seen the guard before, nor did he know his victim's name, Earl Porter. At his trial, Willie cheerfully admitted his guilt. To this day, he told the jury, the only regret Bosket has is not having killed Earl Porter and spitting on his corpse. The reason for the stabbing, Willie said, was that he had been incarcerated since he was 9 years old, and prisons had become his surrogate mother. Consequently, Willie proclaimed, I am only a monster created by the system. Now, mind you, this is 1988. He stabbed a CO on a visiting floor. Almost unheard of, where we all know the history of New York State correctional facilities and the racist nature and the brutality of correction officers in these spots, where there have been rumors of our melanated people being murdered and hidden under gym floors in the prison, outside of the walls of prisons, in the dungeons of these prisons. So for a young man, we're not talking about a seasoned convict. We're talking about a young man to stab a police on a visiting floor. Unheard of in those days, especially not to the point at which you're going to survive. Nah, just doesn't work like that. Okay? And when I'm reading and I'm thinking 1988, he was in there doing that. And in 1988, I was in the Army, on my way overseas. And like Willie, had committed hundreds of strong arm and armed robberies. Like, for adolescents at that time, for young men at that time, yeah, our militancy, our rebelliousness was off the meter. It really and truly was. So at certain points, you begin to identify with the mentality, the rage, right? The unanswered questions. And these are some of the things we must remember when we're making an attempt to connect to our youth today. We cannot allow them to believe that we don't know and understand where they're coming from. We have to sit in the pocket and listen, or we risk another generation or two of Willies, because we are in right now, we are in the generation where Willie Bosket is the average young black teen. Let's not mistake it. Let's not say, well, my son and my cousin, and those are exceptions to what's going on right now. Right now, our people, especially our young people, are so disconnected from society, disconnected from their communities, disconnected from humanity and empathy, that this is them. And we must know that. We have to know that before we can begin correcting. Okay? Willie's testimony caught the attention of an editor at the New York Times, E.R. Shipp. Shipp, one of the first African American editors at the Times, wondered what made Willie so violent. And she thought his story might provide an insight into why so many young people in our inner cities have taken to killing. Scanning the newsroom for a reporter, for some reason, she fixed on me. I accepted the assignment with misgiving. Little in my professional training or experience, most of which involved 15 years working in Asia, prepared me for it. I was also ambivalent about Willie. Some journalists intent on writing about criminals end up being seduced by them and become their publicists. Still, I had lived as a boy in the old segregated South, when there were white and colored drinking fountains and chain gangs working the roads in striped pajamas. And I had become enthralled by African American history, reading as much as was available in the restricted era before the Civil Rights Movement. Perhaps Willie offered an unexpected way to revisit my youthful interests and, at the same time, to try to come to grips with the topic that was transfixing Americans: why our country is so violent. Okay? So, and you could see, this reporter didn't even want this assignment, as many of them don't. Again, they don't care about us to the degree of where they want to hear our stories. They just don't. Fortuitously, Willie himself had begun to ponder the same question. He knew it was too late to save himself, but he watched with alarm as his favorite niece, a bright, ebullient 9-year-old, started to get into trouble at school. He wanted to do something to stop her and other children from following his path. So when I wrote to Willie, he answered immediately and arranged a visit, putting me on his short visitors list at Woodburn Correctional Facility, the state prison where he was kept. Any so-called civilized society should be extremely concerned with the sociological, criminological, penological, and hereditary implications involved in the Willie Bosket story, he wrote. He had a habit of referring to himself in the third person. It made him seem grander, adding heft to his already large legend. Now, Woodburn is about 2 hours and 15 minutes away from the city. For the amount of time he had is actually a medium A classified facility, which means there's only fences. They don't have a wall. Like when you see Clinton, Dannemora, or Sing Sing, they have walls, right? Comstock, that's how you know it's a maximum security facility in New York State. Mediums have fences. Woodburn, though, is one medium. Well, at the time, one of the mediums with a segregation box, and he has his own, by himself, his own wing, his own box. He is completely for dolo by himself, and it's been like that since. Okay? On inspection, Woodburn was an odd choice as a place to hold Willie. It was not even a maximum security prison. It just happened to be where the state could construct a super isolation chamber for its most troublesome inmate. From a distance, the prison looked like a medieval monastery, perched in brooding solitude on a bluff above a narrow valley in the Catskill Mountains. The nearest town, incongruously, was named Liberty. This was the epicenter of the Bach Belt, where generations of Jewish families from New York once came in the summer to rented cabins or big resorts like Grossinger's. It was here that Danny Kaye, Sid Caesar, and Milton Berle got their start. Assimilation and air conditioning had destroyed that summer world. Now the local economy depended heavily on a new thriving industry, state prisons. Okay? Okay? So, as in documentaries like the 13th and from other people who come on YouTube and consistently tell you that the prison industrial complex, right, is alive and thriving. Here this is stated in the book, right? Originally, copyright wrote in the print. When was this book originally printed? You know, this was, give me a second. Original copyright in 1995. Okay? 1995. But this is something that we've been speaking about for a long time, this prison industrial complex, right? That these facilities, these prisons are placed in these small towns townships, enclaves up in the cut, and they are actually the economic base of the individual, of the people around there who went belly up. Some of the farms went belly up. As you can see, these were little Jewish hideaways and spots where they would go on family vacations and to family events to, you know, do what they do, socialize, throw their wealth around, entertain themselves, and make these connections to keep themselves thriving. Now, these things are replaced by prisons. And not only were they replaced by these prisons, these institutions, right, these facilities, they were filled by taking people out of the communities that we reside in, that we populate, pluck the young people out right before their working age, right before they're employable to get decent salaries that may be able to assist their families and get them out of poverty. Boom, they shoot them right to jail. Slave labor. All right? And when Willie was going through in 85, 86, 87, 88, and the crack epidemic was 84, 85, 86, 87, 88. Also, when you do your research, you will see that Governor Cuomo, not this one, his father, Mario, in his term, which was over a decade, there were more facilities built than any other time in New York State. Any other time in New York State, the Democratic governor built 20, 30 medium facilities, minimum facilities, ready to house hundreds of thousands, well, 100,000, okay? And the plan worked to a T, okay? In preparation for my arrival, Willie had been handcuffed and manacled and trundled out aboard in his cell door, right? Aboard his cell door. 3 guards had then put him in an adjacent cell, which had been divided in half by a steel wall. This was where he received visits from his lawyers, his mother, and a handful of friends. Each half of the narrow cell was just wide enough for a chair. A small space had been cut in the partition for viewing, and there were a series of pinprick-sized holes for talking. Everything had been covered over with an extra layer of plexiglass and wire mesh thick enough to prevent raccoons from clawing through. "Welcome," Willie said exuberantly. "I can get you whatever you want. Ginger ale, juice, I run the show here. The guards aren't going to argue with me." To prove it, he yelled for a correction officer. "Yo, CO." The guard came promptly. Willie winked knowingly at me. Okay? Willie's hands were padlocked behind his waist to a wide leather belt, and his ankles were in leg irons. But he acted as though he was in command. He seemed to relish the situation, despite his confinement in a tiny, shrunken world. It was as if by some feat of prestigious, it's late, prestigitation, he had altered reality and was no longer the prisoner. He had made prison into his palace. Right? Let me get this right. I know it's tired. Yeah, I'm taking my time, GP. Prestidigitation. I need some water, something. Prestidigitation. Okay? I need some water. But you know I don't like showing y'all my back. I hate leaving. You dig? I hate leaving. And let's fund this war effort. And I'm glad y'all here after midnight on the East Coast. Them West Coast people, they got their feet kicked up. So they don't know how tired we is right now. They don't know that. They living it up on the beach somewhere. But we got them. Okay? But again, this is how, right? This is how the mind can adapt to conditions and in a way give you a delusional feeling of accomplishment, right? So you see how that works? You see how your mind, because of the harshness of your conditions, because of you not wanting to accept the reality of your space, right? You begin to believe that you're right. It's like some of our good bougie people believe that they're right when they side with the government, when they side with institutions against the people. You understand? Knowing that they wrong as hell. This is how the mind works. You find through your default a coping mechanism, and through that coping mechanism, you're able to function. We're very deep, very wicked. Let's continue. Recently, he said, lying awake at night, he had the presentiment that there was something inside him that impelled him to act as he did. He wondered if it was his father. Willie had never met his father, who bore the same formal name, Willie James Bosket. All he knew as a boy is what his mother and grandmothers told him, that his father was a murderer and that he looked just like him. By the time Willie was born, in fact, his father was already in jail awaiting trial for a double homicide. Whenever young Willie misbehaved, his mother scolded him with the imprecation, "You're going to end up just like your father." See how words manifest? You're going to end up just like your father. Knowing that the young man never even met his father. But by telling him that he was a murderer, he was in jail for murder, and he was going to end up just like him, you plant the seed. There were other coincidences that intrigued him. Willie confided. Both he and his father had been sent to the same reform school at the age of 9, and both he and his father had been taken to Bellevue Hospital for psychiatric evaluation. This is it, GP. This is what we said from Bookclub. This is what we talked about the last 2 book club sessions. All God's children. Download it, order it. Okay? Deep. Again, him and his father, same reform school. Him and his father both went to Bellevue for psychiatric evaluation. Him and his father both ended up in jail for murder. It's going to get even deeper. Okay? Willie had a story to tell about himself. It was a baleful tale of growing up poor in Harlem, of abuse and emotional neglect, of a chaotic juvenile justice system, and of a reckless obsession with violence. But he knew virtually nothing about his family's background, not even where his own father was born. Willie sensed that the mystery of his family's history might hold important clues to his behavior. We all descend from the past, and no individual exists free from his or her patrimony. Okay? So Willie suggested I search for his family's origins, a task he clearly could not perform. He would supply the documents he had amassed about himself, hundreds of pages of juvenile criminal records, psychiatric reports, and trial transcripts. These provided a starting point, a cornucopia of normally confidential information. Where there was gaps, and there were many, Willie would also give me permission to seek the declassification of other sealed files about his own life, as well as that of his father, who had died in a shootout with sheriff deputies in 1985. Okay? And again, as we discussed in class, Willie, a young man, youthful, murderous, ultra-violent, his father, murderous, ultra-violent. His father died in a shootout with police in 1985. Willie was already facing murder charges in 1985. So for those who, again, believe that NWA was the start of that, here we go. This is a generational father and son who did this before NWA even existed. Okay? I'm just saying. I know my shit. Okay? At the outset of this quest, I thought I would be lucky to get a clear picture of Willie's father. Later, as the research progressed, I discovered that his grandfather, too, had a criminal record, and that his great-grandfather was a legendary bad man at the turn of the century. Willie and I discussed each new layer as it was unearthed. Little did we imagine that the story could be traced back to slave times before the Civil War, and then eventually all the way back to the American Revolution. What emerged was not just a portrait of the Boskets, but a new account of the origin and growth of violence in the United States. Violence is not, as many people today presume, a recent problem or a peculiarly urban bane, and in its inception, it had little to do with race or class, with poverty or education, with television or the fractured family, in short, with most of the usual suspects. Rather, it grew out of a proud culture that flourished in the antebellum rural South, a tradition shaped by whites long before it was adopted and recast by some blacks in relation to their plight. For its adherents, it served almost as a way of life, and at its heart was a lethal impulse. And that is it for the prologue. When we come back, we're going to be on part 1. So get your books, okay? We're going to get into chapter 1, okay? This is what we have to do. Again, when you come to class, I'm making an attempt to open your lens, to broaden your comprehension and understand what is going on now, how it affects you, how you find your purpose in it and move through and around it. We have to look at these things from a different space, because in that we will find that divine order. You understand? And in finding that divine order, we begin to balance ourselves and become more effective when it comes to liberating ourselves, being soldiers, to taking revolution, ceasing it, and making sure that we give a new name to ourselves. And in that new name, changing the world around us. But we need a clear understanding of what is going on. We're not going to get it from them. Everything that we see in terms of propaganda, in terms of what they deem newsworthy, is put out there to elicit feelings from you, to cause you to shift and shimmy and to lose faith in yourself. So as I make every attempt to open that up, to expand and expound on that, you did? How we moving? We have to. We have to move on that. You did? My son, 20 and 23, they need this wisdom. Thank God they work in young men and not in the streets, where anyone I get to keep them grounded. The village is definitely necessary. Most definitely. Most definitely. But even in that space of where they are, and even in the space where we are, in this class, we can never forget that we don't exist in this world, in this universe, on our own. We're not out here by ourselves. So the ignorance is always there. Ignorance is always there. And you have to know how to defend yourself and defeat that ignorance, which means you cannot have any hesitation, cannot have any hesitation in knocking somebody's head off that may look just like you. That is the information that your sons have to walk with. that they're not walking into a space of love unless they create these spaces. Once we leave our dwellings, we're susceptible to the world around us. And the world around us is deep entrenched in ignorance. You understand? Just like I have trolls here, there's trolls in the world. And in the space of them being young men, 20 and 23, and doing their thing, all around them is ignorance. And because they move in that light, they move in that grand energy, they will be attacked. And they will have to know how to stand their square in intelligence and in militancy. You dig? So as long as you consistently speaking with them, learning from them, allowing them to learn from you, and learn from others who have every intention on keeping them safe, they'll be all right. They'll be all right. Okay? But again, we not on the West Coast. So we are really pushing our limits here. You dig? Because when, as always, sometimes our smallest classes are our most engaging and most, intelligent classes where we get the most out of. You dig? So again, always think love of self initially. Come back to class with all 10 fingers and 10 toes. Okay? And as you part, right? Make sure you fund the war effort. You dig? My co-worker going through a lot of problems for a 17-year-old. Yeah. Tell her to come through. Tell her to book an assessment for her and then for her son, and we'll see exactly how we can assist her with that. You dig? 17 is a crucial age. And most people go through it when they're not equipped. They're not equipped. Everyone isn't, the best when it comes to dealing with their children. Not saying that she isn't the best parent, but you can have the best drivers in the world, but they can't get up under the hood and fix no car. You understand what I'm saying? Sometimes it's a little help on the other side of your situation. So, again, y'all in class, y'all know where I'm at. You know the mission, you know the task. I'm available. You can't say that you have no one to direct her to, and then once you do that, that's on her. She can never say that there was no outreach. So, again, do what you do. All the contact information is there. All right? So again, we on the East Coast, so we got to take it down. We've been up for a long time. Yeah, we've been up for a nice amount of time. I don't know about the rest of them people, California, they got their feet kicked up. They don't get out of bed till 10:30. They on the beach, drinking sun dews and all type of wild stuff. East Coast here it's cold. We got to get up, bundle up, get out there and get this work in. Okay? So again, all my classroom assistants, again, much appreciated for holding it down. All right? Remember, keep building, keep adding to the class, keep sharing, keep chopping up the vids, the best parts, keep doing what you're doing, okay? And make sure you keep the funding, effort, information on all platforms. You did? Andrea, salute, salute. Much appreciated. No doubt, GP, we here. All right? Vance, salute, salute. Peace.